15-Minute Mondays, your kickstart to week high-energy 15-minute episode on the Success Blueprint. I'm your host, Daniel Greg Johnson. Let's get right into it. Hello everybody, welcome back on the Success Blueprint and the 15-Minute Monday. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. I am very excited about this week and this week's topic. I hope you enjoyed last one. Today we talk about one thing that comes up for me quite often when I speak to people, and it's about their past and their repeating patterns. Because you are not healing. You are just explaining your patterns more intelligently. And that is what I recognize. Some people are not healing. They have just become highly educated about the prison they refuse to leave. And I see this over and over again. And it drives me mad, tribe. That is uncomfortable to hear, especially in a world where everyone is learning the language of trauma, triggers, attachment styles, nervous systems, boundaries, childhood wounds, emotional regulation, self-awareness, and I can go on and on. And let me say this carefully. That language can be useful and it's necessary. It can give people words for things they carried silently for years. It can help someone to stop blaming themselves for pain they did not understand. But here's the danger, a very subtle one. You can learn the language of healing so well that you start using it to protect the very behavior that is hurting you. You can explain your pattern beautifully and still repeat it tomorrow. You can describe your trigger with academic precision and still punish the person in front of you. And you can understand your childhood wound and still use it as a lifelong permission slip. And at some point, insight without interruption becomes decoration. So tribe, welcome back to 15-Minute Mondays on the Success Blueprint, where we get better at this thing called life and business. Today we're going into something that sits right in the middle of personal growth, leadership, relationships, and self-deception. We are talking about the difference between understanding yourself and actually changing yourself. There is a strange thing happening in modern self-development. People are becoming more aware, more informed, more emotionally literate, and somehow still stuck in the same arguments, the same avoidance, the same shutdown, the same overreaction, and the same self-sabotage. The same need for validation. And yes, sure, they can explain the pattern now. That part improved. They know where it comes from. They have names for it. They have watched the videos. They have read the posts. They have listened to the podcasts like mine. They can say, I react like this when I feel unsafe. Or, that is my anxious attachment. Or, my nervous system goes into protection mode. And sometimes, tribe, that is true. But then comes the harder question. What changed? Not what did you understand? Not what did you discover? Not what language did you learn? What changed in your behavior when life pressed the old button? That is where the real work starts, tribe. And why does this matter? This matters because self-awareness can become a very convincing hiding place. It feels productive, it sounds mature, people respect it. You can sit at dinner and explain your patterns in a way that makes everyone nod. You can sound emotionally intelligent while still living emotionally unchanged. In leadership, this becomes dangerous. A leader may say, I know I avoid conflict because of how I grew up. But the team still receives unclear feedback. Standards still drift. Poor performance still sits untouched. The leader has insight, but the business has consequences. And in relationships, someone may say, I know I shut down when I feel criticized, but their partner still ends up lonely, confused, and emotionally locked outside the door. The explanation may be accurate, the impact is still real. And in personal life, people can spend years collecting insight and mistake that for progress. They understand why they procrastinate, why they choose unavailable people, why they overgive, why they explode, why they disappear, why they never finish what they start. But the pattern remains employed. It still has a desk, a salary, and a parking spot in their life. The cost is self-trust, tribe. After a while, you stop believing your own breakthroughs. You have had too many realizations that did not become receipts. And that's what I teach my clients, a receipt culture. What can you show me? Where's the proof? And what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that insight gives emotional relief before it gives behavioral responsibility. When you finally understand the pattern, there's a rush of relief. You think, oh, that is why I do this. And that moment matters. It can soften shame. It can create compassion. It can help you stop calling yourself broken. But relief is not the same as repair. Understanding why the house is burning does not put out the fire. Many people stop at the explanation stage. They treat the inside as the finish line. They say, now I know why I'm like this. And somehow that becomes enough. Critical thinking asks a sharper question, tribe. If the explanation is true, what responsibility does it create right now? If you know you withdraw when you feel rejected, what do you do the next time you want to disappear? If you know you overreact when you feel disrespected, what system do you put in place before your mouth destroys trust? If you know you avoid difficult conversations, what meeting do you schedule instead of narrating your fear for another month? That is the line. Insight becomes healing only when it changes your next move. And what's the cost and consequence? What are we bleeding here? Here's the uncomfortable part. Some people are addicted to insight because insight lets them feel deep without requiring them to be disciplined. That sounds harsh, but look closely. There's a strange comfort in being able to explain your pain. It gives you identity. It gives shape to the chaos. It can even give you a kind of status in certain circles. You become the person who knows their wounds, knows their patterns, knows their emotional architecture. But life does not reward vocabulary. Life responds to behavior. Your partner does not experience your attachment theory. They experience whether you stay present during discomfort. And your team does not experience your childhood story. They experience whether you make decisions, give feedback, and keep standards clear. Your body does not experience your self-awareness posts. It experiences whether you sleep, move, eat, breathe, rest, and stop living on emotional adrenaline. And this is where people get stuck. They want compassion for the origin of the pattern, but resist when asked to interrupt the pattern. And both are needed. Compassion explains how you got here. Responsibility decides whether you stay here. That is the big one. So let me give you a toolkit as per usual. The number one is the pattern receipt. Take one pattern you keep explaining and write down the last 3 times it showed up in real life. Not in theory, in real life. What happened? What did you feel? What did you do? And what did it cost? And this matters because many people talk about patterns as if they are abstract. They are not. Patterns leave receipts. They show up in missed calls, cold silences, unfinished work, apologies, excuses, tension, money problems, lost trust, and repeated arguments. A real-life application would be someone who says, I shut down when I feel overwhelmed. Fine. Now write down the last 3 shutdowns. Who was affected? What conversation did you avoid? What did the silence create? Practical implementation is simple. Do not journal the theory. Track the evidence. Patterns become easier to change when they stop hiding inside vague language. Number 2, the interruption point. The second tool is the interruption point. Every pattern has a moment where it can still be interrupted before it becomes behavior. There's usually a physical sign first. Tight chest, faster speech, heat in the face, silence, withdrawal, the urge to defend, the urge to explain, or the urge to punish. And this matters because change rarely happens after the explosion. It happens in the 2 seconds before the old version of you takes the wheel. In a relationship, the interruption point may be the moment you want to send the sharp message. And in leadership, it may be the moment you want to avoid the feedback meeting. In daily life, it may be the moment you say, I will do it tomorrow, while already knowing tomorrow is a lie. Implementation, name your signal, then choose one replacement move. Pause before replying, say I need 5 minutes. Open the document, book the meeting. Put the phone down. The interruption does not need to be dramatic, it needs to be earlier. Tool number 3, the behavioral proof test. This one, ask yourself, if we're actually healing this pattern, what would someone close to me notice? That question cuts through fantasy. You may feel different inside, but would your partner notice more honesty? Would your team notice clearer decisions? Would your children notice more patience? Would your business notice more follow-through? Would your body notice better care? This is important because growth that never becomes observable is still incomplete. Use this in any area where you keep claiming progress. If you say you are becoming more emotionally regulated, what would prove it? Fewer defensive reactions, faster repairs, better listening, Less blame, more direct communication, practical implementation. Choose one visible behavior as your proof for the next week. Not a feeling, not a concept, a behavior. Tool number 4, the no excuse translation. Take your explanation and translate it into responsibility. I avoid conflict because I grew up around anger becomes I'm learning to have difficult conversations without treating discomfort as danger. I overgive because I fear rejection becomes I am learning to let people experience my boundaries without rushing to rescue their opinion of me. I procrastinate because pressure overwhelms me becomes I am building smaller starting rituals so pressure does not become the boss. This is so important because an explanation should create a bridge, not a bunker. It should help you move, not help you hide. And the practical implementation, write one sentence that explains the pattern. Then one sentence that defines your new responsibility. Read the second sentence more often than the first. And number 5, the repair window. The 5th tool, the repair window. When the old pattern wins, repair quickly. Do not wait 3 days. Do not disappear into shame. Go back and clean the impact. This matters because real healing is not perfection. It is faster ownership. The time between reaction and repair tells you a lot about someone's growth. In a business setting, repair may sound like I avoided giving you clear feedback, and that was unfair. Let's address it properly. In a relationship, it may sound like I shut down earlier. That is my pattern, but it is still my responsibility. Can we try again? And the practical implementation here, create a personal rule. When you repeat an old pattern, repair within 24 hours. No performance, no self-attack, just ownership. And what's the deeper meaning here, tribe? Why does this matter? Why am I so passionate about this? Well, at a deeper level, this episode is about the difference between identity and evidence. Many people want to identify as healed, conscious, evolved, aware, emotionally intelligent, but identity without evidence becomes theater. The ego can wear personal development clothing. It can sound humble while staying untouched. It can say all the right words and still protect the same fear. Human beings are brilliant at making avoidance look noble. We call it processing. We call it boundaries. We call it protecting our peace. Sometimes those things are real. Other times, there are elegant names for not doing the hard thing. The deeper work is not to sound healed. It is to become less harmful to yourself and less costly to the people around you. That is less glamorous. It is also more honest. In business, I've seen this a lot. When a leader knows they are conflict avoidant but still let the same person poison the team culture. They can explain the fear, the team still pays the bill. In relationships, someone may understand their abandonment wound but still test their partner, withdraw affection or create emotional traps. The language changed. The pattern did not. And in daily life, someone may say they are working on self-worth, but they still say yes when they mean no. Still chase approval, still abandon their own needs, then call themselves exhausted. In culture, we have almost made awareness fashionable. Everyone is diagnosing, naming, explaining, labeling, but labels do not equal liberation. A label can be a map. It can also become a cage if you keep polishing it instead of walking out. Let me give you some advanced strategies. If you're really motivated, write it down. From behavior science, identity change needs feedback. You cannot rely only on inner insight. You need evidence from repeated action. The brain learns through repetition, not elegant conclusions. If the old pattern has been rehearsed for years, one beautiful realization will not erase it. You need new reps. Stoicism gives us another useful angle. Do not obsess over what happened to you at the expense of what is now required of you. That does not dismiss pain. It refuses to let pain become the only author of your future. Critical thinking asks us to separate cause from excuse, tribe. A cause helps us understand origin. An excuse blocks responsibility. Mature growth can hold both at once. This pattern makes sense and it still needs to change. In leadership, we could call this accountability with context. You understand the background, but you still measure the behavior. You can care deeply about someone's story and still require standards. That applies to teams, it applies to families, it applies to yourself. Peak performance lives here, Not in endless self-analysis, but in shorter recovery loops, cleaner behavior, better repair, and fewer repeated explanations. So I'll leave you with this weekly challenge. This week, choose one pattern you keep explaining. Only one. Write down the last 3 times it appeared, what it cost, and where the interruption point was. Then choose one behavioral proof for the next 7 days. Do not make it dramatic. Make it visible. If you usually shut down, stay in the conversation for 2 extra minutes. If you usually avoid the task, start for 10 minutes. If you usually over-explain, say the honest sentence once. If you usually blame your trigger, repair it faster. One pattern, one interruption, one visible proof. And that's enough to begin. And let's not forget our sponsor, Dogmati, for supporting the show. I appreciate brands that take well-being seriously without turning it into noise, pressure, or another impossible standard people feel they must perform. Real well-being is often built through small, consistent choices that support your energy, recovery, focus, and ability to show up with a clearer mind. Dogmati Mushrooms is a reminder that looking after yourself does not have to be dramatic to matter. Sometimes the quiet habits are the ones carrying you more than you realize. Head over to dogmati.com with the discount code DAN20, DAN20. You receive a 20% discount on your first purchase. And my call to action to you, if this episode made you uncomfortable in the right way, subscribe to the Success Blueprint and then take the episode link, share it with 3 people, Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, TikTok, wherever you communicate, and help me grow the tribe. And I will leave you for the week with this. Maybe healing is not proven by how well you can explain your wound. Maybe it is proven by how much less the wound controls the room when life presses on it. That is the part people do not always want to hear. Your explanation may be valid, your pain may be real, your history may matter deeply, but the next version of your life will not be built by describing the old pattern more beautifully. It will be built the moment you interrupt the tribe. And that was it. Daniel Craig Johnson, your host on the Success Blueprint. With my promise, I'll be back. Take care.